can you guys see Ethan whistling while he works and then bunny rabbits and robins and birds come?
Yeah, I'm putting them. They're not forming a union though. We're not letting them. Not letting the animals form a union. That's
Dare they?
I can't afford that.
I'm leaving this in.
Hello, welcome to Cassette Tank, where you can eject wherever you want, probably at that moment. But, but please don't forget to run. I'm Ethan.
I'm Annmarie.
And Annmarie, what did we just go see?
I'm not even going to attempt to whistle. We just saw Snow White 2025 live action.
Yes, the Disney's Snow White, which is the live-action adaptation of
Snow White.
Disney's Snow White.
Yes.
So yeah, a lot. Okay, before anything, let's address the giant, probably talking elephant in the room.
Oh no, we're going to go straight for that right away?
Well, I mean, a little prelude. I think a lot of us are already aware going into this movie that, there's a lot of hate against it, going in and like, well, when it was in pre-production, was in production, when, Rachel Zegler, who plays Snow White,
Long Gadot, her controversies
yeah,
too.
like so many controversies arose with this film. And,
we're not going to dig into
we're not going to really dig into all that.
We're here to review the movie, not the people.
Amen. And the thing is, it's just we wanted to make sure that let you guys know we were aware of all that and how we're separating that from the integrity of the film.
Yes.
Now with that, we have no sense of integrity.
No, we don't.
No, so yeah, Snow White, Annmarie, what are your initial thoughts about this movie that we just saw that a lot of people have been talking about for quite a while now, and we finally have it in our optical nerves and as a result in our memories?
It's not as bad as people make it out to see. It really isn't. I think at the end of the day, if we just take it as a movie and not that it's a secondary movie of another movie, it's really not that bad. People are making this sound like a horrible movie, that no one should go see it. You guys, I enjoyed this. I think there's some lovely parts in here. I think Rachel Zegler is outstanding in her performance as Snow White. I think she's a great singer, and she does carry the movie. Is it perfect? No, but it's not that bad.
Right. I have to agree with you quite a bit on that. It's a movie where, like, again, I don't agree with a lot of the choices going into it. Like the choice to use CGI dwarves, the choice. I love Rachel Zegler. Like, she's a great actress. I think she's awesome. From what was it, West Side Story, which was her debut, and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. She's had some excellent performances, and she's an excellent actress.
Great singer.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I personally wouldn't have put her in the Snow White role. And even after seeing the movie, I probably still would have picked someone else. But this was the adaptation that they were trying to tell, and there were a lot of different things I could critique about it. Where, as a Snow White adaptation, I'm like, I wouldn't have done that. And maybe you shouldn't have done that. But, if this is the way you want to tell it, then at the end of the day, it is Disney's Snow White. So this is how they want to go about it. Cool. Let's leave it up to that. As a result, it's not bad at all. Like,
it has a strong first half.
Yes, it's a very strong first half. The production design is there. A lot of the performances are pretty solid. Not all of them, but
we'll
a lot of them. The score is great, and of course that's just really based on what has already come before. But you can really tell that Mark Webb, who directed the film, and you might know him from Amazing Spider-Man, he did a really great job to direct this movie and did the best he could to make a a really great adaptation of Snow White. And I'd say he did a really, overall, as a result, a solid job.
Yeah, I think it does get the work done that it needs to do. And is it different from the original? Yes, it is different from the original. And let me just say this right away. I'm going to jump into controversy right away. I do not care if you remake a film. I do not care, because at the end of the day, I will always have the original. If Brad Bird comes out tomorrow and says, hey guys, I'm making a live action Incredibles, my favorite movie, fine. Go for it, Brad Bird. Does not bother me, because guess what? At the end of the day, I have the original one. And what I hope for movies that do get remade is they still hold the essence of the original, and I feel like Snow White did that.
Right. And it did carry that heart on into this movie. And you could tell they set out to make not just a, cash grab. They like did try to bring back notes and beats from the original that a lot of people do cherish in their hearts. And I mean, Snow White was probably one of the first VHS tapes I remember watching.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of those themes and music, little subtle camera angles and positionings, like all that really did harken back to my sense of nostalgia for this, for that movie. And I really appreciate how they went out of their way to do that. This movie does go out of its way to do something different, though, and I can appreciate something like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just going out of your way to make the same movie, like beat for beat, the exact same thing, I don't really think anyone truly wants that, unless you're weird and don't like the original and just want a live action version of what already was. Then I don't know, maybe you just have a fetish thing for hating animation. I don't know, you're weird. But I mean, it really does a good job of kind of balancing those differences out when it leans into those differences and when it, leans into the heart of the original. I think it does a good job for the most part. Not always. Key thing is it's not always doing a great job of it, but I would say for the most part, more often than not, it does.
Well, and also it has to change some stuff, because Snow White, the original one, I believe it's only less than 90 minutes. I don't even think it's 90 minutes at all. So this added on a few extra scenes and songs, and it has to make it different. I don't mind that. Like, it's fine. Like, make it different. Like, I still think it holds the essence of the original, and I know we're going to talk about what they changed, but really at the end of the day, like, people are definitely hating on this for outside reasonings, and I'm not here to tell you you're right or you're wrong.
There's already so many videos on YouTube you can go to for why people didn't like this movie going into it.
But at the end of the day, I think if you go into it with an open mind, it's not as bad as people make it seem. So
Right. Now that we've given our praises, let's talk about what we obviously kind of disdain a little bit about this movie.
Gal Gadot. I'm sorry. I really, really, really don't want anyone to be bad at their job. I don't. But Gal Gadot, I don't know what it is, but her acting falls flat.
She has a really good presentation about her for that role, I would say, with everything else, but when it comes down to her cadence consistency with that character, it's just not there. There's no consistency, and it really throws things off, and it makes you remember, like, oh, this isn't the the evil witch queen or whatever. It's Gal Gadot playing her.
Yeah, and I don't even think she's like a bad pick for the evil queen. It's just her acting. I don't know what it is. I think it's her tone. Like, there's not very much tonal change in her lines. You think it's more consistency based, though.
Yeah, like a cadence consistency of how she delivers her lines. So yeah, I mean, it does, as a result, that works with tone that you try to set, when you're acting. But it's just I don't feel I feel like the casting director was like, oh, she looks the part and she can deliver the part here and there.
Yeah.
But they didn't really think of oh, well, she has to deliver that part throughout a whole movie. And, you know, again, Gal Gadot, like, she's been great in a lot of, like, rom-coms. And, of course, as Wonder Woman, I personally like the take that she delivered with that. I know not everyone did, but I personally did. And thought she did a great job with her performance there. But, yeah, when it comes to this movie, it really does feel like, okay, this is Gal Gadot playing a character. You know, it doesn't feel like that's the character there.
I just kept thinking of Cowbell. No. I really want her to get better at it. And I agree. I think in certain roles she thrives in, like comedy, I think she really thrives in that. And it's just unfortunate because a lot of her lines just fall flat to me in this film.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's kind of a microcosm for the balance of this movie, where there's a lot of weird tonal shifts, where it goes from almost ethereal, nostalgic bliss of the, you know, beautiful original music from the original Snow White to suddenly being like, okay, now we're in like a modern musical. That it's honestly a lot of the new songs, they're pretty generic sounding. Like it's your typical run of the mill musical, like big production musical sound, you know, and that it's weird to go from something that was once like truly majestic and, you know, wonderful and unique to suddenly like I'm gonna change things and walk through a hallway, like and feel dancing and angry occasionally. Freedom, like it's just it was really jarring at times, and there's not only that with the songs, but with the cadences of some of the other characters like Rachel Zegler, Snow White, where she's occasionally really bringing that whole character of Snow White, like from the original, the soft spoken but like you know very positive and light bringing kind of character to the scene, and then suddenly it's like this weird too modern flirtatious situation. I think she's pretty solid when she's not with her love interest.
Oh, yeah.
The chemistry between them wasn't terrible, but it just there was a completely different tonal shift when they were interacting versus when Rachel is at like by herself or you know occasionally with the dwarves. It just felt very different, and it didn't really always feel like the same character.
Yeah, I will say so. To go back to the music thing, I found that this has been an issue for a lot of new Disney films. Moana 2, I feel like this happened a lot where the songs just don't hit as hard because they're like this fast, they're like newer, and it doesn't really work for me. And I totally agree with you that I do like Rachel Zegler in this role. I think she's a great singer. I do think she's a great actress. But oh my god, the way she's written is just it felt like two different characters at certain points.
Yeah, and I mean, not only written, but I would arguably say kind of mixture of acting and directing is also at fault there. You know, it's just like once you are given those lines, it's like, okay, well, how can we deliver them to keep consistent with tone, or at least make it feel if we are gonna, you know, transition to a different tone, make it seem less jarring. And here, it just didn't land properly during those transitions, and you can tell. In fact, there's this whole sequence like where the iconic, you know, image of Snow White dancing with the dwarves with the animals flying around and all that. And, you know, the love interest is there, and that whole sequence, it's there. It just kind of exists in my head, but it doesn't stand out. Like I could not tell you how the song goes. I cannot tell you anything else about that scene except, oh, it happened. You know, that's the only thing I could tell you about it because it was just so bland, and it just, there was no, the flow was just so run of the mill.
Yeah, I would say this one isn't as strong with the music. I think there's a couple, like one good song, which is Waiting on a Wish. That's personally my favorite. But the other songs, I could not tell you what they were. Like, Jonathan and the Prince and her have a couple of songs, and I really couldn't tell you how they went, the titles, anything about them. I think the music lacks a little bit in this one, where, again, I don't think Snow White, the original, has strong music either, so I'm sure they were trying to pull in something more, but just landed flat in that way.
I mean, I personally think the original had some quite a bit of stronger music.
I could not tell any song from the original if you asked.
Well, I mean, like the Whistle While You Work,
Well,
that's iconic. And I mean, I'm honestly catching myself always singing that, or whistling to it.
Really?
When I do, chores occasionally. It's just such a blissful song. And, Hi Ho, there's another one. It's just, it truly feels like those songs channel these characters. And then when it gets to these generic run-of-the-mill, modern songs, it's not the fact that they're modern, it's just, again, that tonal shift that just happens so out of nowhere. It really doesn't balance and mesh all that well here. I'm not saying that's not possible, that it could happen, where, like, you can't have a modern sounding song and something that is a little more classical or ethereal in one whole, sequence. You can. Just make sure that it seems seamless.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys see Ethan whistling while he works, and then bunny rabbits and robins and birds come?
Yeah, I'm putting them. They're not forming a union, though. We're not letting them. Not letting the animals form a union. That's.
Dare they?
I can't afford that. Just see like the like a bunch of squirrels with like picket signs. No, but speaking of a lot of these sequences, I think something that definitely needs to be brought up is the decision to use CGI dwarves.
Oh my god.
Now, I have my opinion on this. Annmarie, what is yours?
I think that's where the movie falls for me. As soon as we meet them, I think it falls, which is unfortunate because something about it just, when you first saw Lion King and you're like, that's not a lion, like, it looks so weird. That's kind of how I felt with these dwarfs. Something about it didn't work, and their dialogue didn't work for me. They feel like secondary, like, not even secondary, like third characters in this story, where I feel like in the original there were more secondary characters.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, because wasn't the original called Snow White and the Seven Dwarves?
Yeah, and this
one's just Snow White.
Snow White, yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that, there you go, but...
Get rid of them.
Yeah, and it, not only that, but the animals as well, like, they kind of went out of their way to make them look more Disney-fied, like, relative to the original animation.
I appreciate that, though. I don't want scary turtles looking at me.
Well, I mean, that doesn't have to be scary. Like, I've seen, like, realistic-looking animals.
Have you seen Lion King? It's terrifying.
Right, but they're talking like humans.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Here, they just be acting like animals, except, like, maybe a little more eccentric. Eccentric animals, Annmarie. Just how their mothers raised them. Again, that whole balance of, trying to make us believe that these are, truly characters that are there, and, like, that these are the dwarves that, like, truly interact with Snow White and the people on set. Same thing with the animals. And the fact, though, here's the interesting thing I was not expecting. They use real people with dwarfism in the movie, but not as the dwarves.
Yeah, there's, like, one character that's, like, the crossbow guy.
There's actually a couple characters, like, throughout the movie that, have it. And it's just, like, if you're trying to make me believe that these are, dwarves, while... you got one and especially when they bring them into the same scene, it's like, huh?
This, I'm sure we can talk about it more because they do something else with the dwarfs, which is super weird, but I never believed that they were in the same room. I was like, oh, these are like CGI creatures, like, they're not in the same room. I don't know, didn't work. A different direction, just didn't hit.
It was just so odd, and it made me feel like these were the elves from Polar Express.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
Especially Grumpy. Oh my gosh, what was going on with Grumpy?
I don't know.
Like, it did not. He felt like one of the elves that was pulled out Polar Express, and then they just put him in here, put him in a longer beard and a hat, or like a more dwarfy hat, I guess, if you will. Gosh,
You're
I don't know
not
what
an
it's called.
elf, you're a dwarf now.
But it's just it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Like, I mean, occasionally there'll be moments where the dwarfs are there and they're, doing their thing, and it's like, oh, okay, like when they're the whole hi-ho scene. That was wonderful. I thought that was great. I thought it was fun. It's not the best thing I've ever seen, but I thought it was, fun. And then it's like once another live action character comes on screen working with them, it kind of, makes you kind of pull aside that suspense of disbelief, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm watching a movie. And that's sometimes the worst thing that can happen while you're watching a movie. You remember that you're here as a form of escapism rather than truly being immersed in the escapism. And here it does kind of hit, drop there and suffer in that case. But I will say, Dopey, he's there.
I don't know. It's just so odd. It just...
Dopey didn't even seem all that dopey.
He really didn't, honestly.
A lot of these characters, other than like Sneezy and Sleepy, didn't really act like in their very signature ways too much. I had trouble telling which one was bashful, which one was happy.
Oh, I had no idea.
Like there was a little more subtle with them, and I'm just like, I don't know. I remember in the original movie, like, it being very obvious as to who was who and all that. But I don't know. It just felt like this whole movie was trying to balance so many different balls here, and it just couldn't balance them both. So occasionally it had to drop one, pick it back up while trying to juggle another, and then it dropped the other one to pick it back up, and it's just like, well, this isn't all that great of an act, is it? But he's trying.
Yeah, it falls short in that sense, and that's kind of where I think the second act fails a lot more, because the first act I felt like I was like, I'm really enjoying this. Like, I'm really digging this. I don't think it's that bad. And then the second act happens. I'm like, oh, there's way too much stuff going on right now that they are not able to handle too well. So
yeah. Before we get into the climax of the movie,
yes,
which I definitely have thoughts about, there is a little funny moment that happens in the movie that I'm just like, oh, I almost laughed out loud, but I didn't want to bother the people sitting in front of us. There's this. So Snow White, of course, is being, as the story goes, being hunted by, huntsmen sent by the witch, or, I say witch, but like, the enchantress.
Evil Queen,
yeah. And there, like, Snow White tricks some of the guards and makes them feel like, oh yeah, this dress that the birds are using to make the dress fly and move around is not Snow White. So she's obviously not there. The dress goes flying, and it lands down on the ground. And obviously at that point, you know that, like, oh, she's not here. We need to go look somewhere else. And I like how the guard goes out of his way to actually stab the dress.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like, why?
He thought it was like Obi-Wan.
I did it.
I just want to make sure it isn't her.
And like just think, oh, like Vader when he's like stepping on there, it's like, where'd he go? But except like you see the birds fly out with Vader and Obi-Wan. It's like, oh, well, he was just standing here a few moments ago. He's gone. Like, the hell.
I guess my question for you, Ethan, is where do you rank Snow White among the other Disney live-action films?
Probably on the lower half of it all. I mean, I know there's not too many that are out that we can go off of, at least in regards to mainline live-action retellings. I wouldn't put it at the very bottom, but it'd be more towards that lower half. How about you?
So, I know not everyone likes Disney live action films. I enjoy them. I think Aladdin's great. I think Little Mermaid's great. I think those films do a better job of exploring the plot and adding new stuff to it. So I would have to agree. I think Snow White's on the lower end, kind of by Lion King in a way for me. But I see the potential it was going for, and
Right.
it's a shame that it just doesn't reach it.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's so many moments where it's just like, wow, that's such a beautiful scene, beautiful shot that, wasn't from the original, that it's like, wow, what if they really leaned into this more? And instead they harken back to something else that really kind of makes you be like, what?
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't work because of what you just did. Now what you doing? It's like, what am I doing here? You lose control in your brain, and but yeah, I will say, in regards to the climax, without giving any spoilers away,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole sequence that they build up, like as to what the climax is going to be, and it doesn't quite happen. Like, it's just, there's so many inconsistencies of like what the plan was, and it was just like, well, why'd you do that if you were just going to be doing that? And the end result just was like, well, you didn't need to be there for that if that was going to happen anyway.
Well, I think this movie was rewritten a lot. And I think it's rewritten because of some comments made by the cast of it. And I don't want to spoil anything, but Rachel Zegler made some comments about the original Snow White and how she's not as daring and fearless. And so I think this movie was rewritten to include the old version, but also the new version of the ending.
Again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
With this failure to balance everything, kind of like my digestive system right there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just, the whole movie could be broken down to simply that, this failure to balance what it's going for.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say if it really knew which way it wanted to go, we probably would get a better story. Like, whether it wanted to be a sincere retelling of what came before, or something that has the heart of what came before, but with a modern twist or modern vibe. Like, I mean, whichever one it could lean into. I mean, maybe there's a gray area there they could have leaned into more. But instead, they just couldn't decide which path they wanted to go down, and decided to do probably the worst thing you can do, and just throw spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, playing both sides. And they needed to not play both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but I think there's quite a bit we need to talk in regards to spoilers.
Yes.
Before we do, Annmarie, out of 10 poorly rendered CGI dwarves,
Oh no.
out of 10, how many would you give Snow White?
Can I do halves? Can I do half dwarfs?
Half dwarves?
I'm gonna go 6.5. And it's only 6.5 because Rachel Zegler really does carry this role for me. I do think she was great. I know not everyone loves her, but I really do think she is such a strong actress in this role. And the music's not awful. I just don't think it's memorable. So I think 6.5 is pretty fair. I did really like the first half, and the second half just kind of falls short. So I I I know people might not be happy with the score I give, but that's truly how I feel. I see the potential, and it could have gotten there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that completely. I would say I would give it a see, I was gonna originally give it a 7 out of 10. I'm like, wow, this is better than I thought it was. With its, flaws in mind and everything, but the ending kind of really, really gets just, they couldn't,
Messy.
yeah, it gets messy, and you could tell that they had no idea where they were going. And it, because of that, it couldn't stick the landing. Because of that, I probably have to drop it down to a 6. It just really brings the whole movie down as a result. And it's disappointing that was the case, but honestly, this movie was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, and for that, I will give it the benefit of a, better than middle of the road score.
Yeah.
So, but guys, Disney's Snow White, minus the 7 dwarves in the title, and minus the 7 dwarves in real life.
Yeah.
So, guys, what do you think of the Snow White? Have you seen it? Are you excited to see it? Are you one of those people that like despises Zegler, Godot, or whoever is your favorite cast person to hate or love? I mean, are you planning to see it because of that? Or are you planning to not see it because of that? Whatever you're thinking, let us know your takes on our tapes in those comments down below. And with that, Annmarie, I think it's spoiler time.
All right. So this movie changes a lot about Snow White. Mainly, I think it's just her character in general, where in the original, she's very timid and kind, and those kind of are her two personality traits. And this, they really try to make her to be this fair person. Fair was a thing that kept coming up, like, she's the fairest of all, she wants to give back and help, which is fine. Again, like I said, I think for Disney films that are older, you need to update them and give them a little bit more depth and all that. And the thing that I was confused about, and I know you have opinions on, is they still include the poison apple and her falling asleep and Jonathan giving her a kiss and waking her up. But then they include the final battle. I put battle in quotes. It's not really a battle, where she like talks her way through. It's just messy.
Yeah, and I mean, that whole end sequence is weird. Like, I mean, I actually thought they weren't going to go for like the whole kiss sequence.
Me either. I thought they were going to switch it and Jonathan would eat the apple.
Yeah, or something like that. Or, maybe there was like like, I felt your love, or like something like that, or kiss on the forehead, or something. Because, just generally I've heard people, they make that controversial of like kissing her while she's sleeping. And,
yes.
But at the end of the day, you think about it, she's dead at that point. She's not alive. She's not sleeping. She's dead.
Ugh, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a necrophiliac if there ever was one. So if there are problems with it, they go a little deeper than that. But 6 feet to be exact. But I would say that I think where the movie really falls apart with the ending is probably right when she accosts the enchantress, like evil queen. It's like, okay, it's building up to her getting all these people to have like I'm a Spartacus moment, and everyone's getting back on her side and all that. And then it's like you see the dwarves behind them, and I'm just like, okay, so great. That's why the dwarves, there was this whole scene where it's like, okay, they had a plan, and like the dwarves were going to go through the tunnel underneath and, sneak in the castle. They must be doing something important.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Earlier in the film, the dwarves have magic hands or something.
It's never addressed ever again.
It's never addressed, and I thought they were going to play into the mining a little bit more, and the evil queen's like, you have to mine for me. That doesn't happen. So I agree. I thought they were going to go in, and the dwarfs were going to touch the walls, and it was going to glow and be colorful. I don't know.
Like where diamonds just kind of engulf her or something.
That's what I honestly thought. I was like, oh, you showed this earlier. Chekhov's gun, so this is going to happen.
Chekhov's glowing, ominous red hands.
Yes, but it's so weird. It's never brought up again. I was like, what the?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It seems like there was just, again, an idea of what could happen, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that, but we'll do this. No, wait, no, we're not going to do that. We'll do this. And then what they ended up going with was just simply like everyone just standing around, and it seemed like they were blocking all her paths to leave. And then she just walks specifically in the direction of the last section of people that was blocking off her pathway. and it just cuts to her already inside. I'm like, wait, what was the point of the dwarves standing in front of the door if she was just gonna walk right past them and get to where she needed to go?
They're third characters. Who cares? It's not.
Apparently, like,
It's called Snow White.
they are so not there. They are so not existent in this world that the queen just like walks right through them because they're not properly rendered yet.
You know, that's actually funny. You know, I feel like you could take the dwarves out of this story. It wouldn't matter because Jonathan, the prince, has a group of merry men. He's like Robin Hood, basically.
Yeah.
It's a group of merry men, and those guys slash girls can really fulfill the role of the dwarves because the dwarves are pointless in this story.
Yeah. I mean, Dopey's the narrator, though.
Okay,
Big
that
twist.
okay.
Without him, there's no story, Annmarie.
What?
You don't get story time with cute little hedgehog rolling on top of the book constantly.
The hedgehog should have said it before. Like, Dopey couldn't talk. Then he talks. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's probably the best way to describe the movie is dopey.
Dopey? Yeah.
Like, they couldn't, meander properly in the right direction, and they ended up having a little bit of a dopey product.
Well, I think they really took in what Rachel Zegler said about, making her just not like this girl that falls in love. But they wanted to include that too. I just wish they would have picked a side.
But here's the thing, they do that in the movie, like at the beginning, like the first act we both enjoyed.
Yeah.
They were showing signs of like still having that heart of the original while also playing this idea of, oh, she's not just a damsel in distress.
No.
And I'm like, oh, okay, if they keep this up, this kind of rhythm up for the most part, we'll have a really good situation going on here. But midway through the film, it just falls apart, and it's like it's not sure which tone it wants to go with.
Yeah. It's just I also hate the love interest. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Jonathan and her are just, they're so forced, and at a point I was like, why did you add this? Like, I really don't even think you need to add this to the story.
Yeah, and again, it really doesn't
do anything.
Yeah, it doesn't add to the story. Like, all their scenes together, I was pretty bored.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think Annmarie probably caught me yawning a couple times, and I'm just like, oh man, call me sleepy, but just wow.
You were, but I don't even know which one was sleepy.
You know what? So that's the one thing. If you're gonna go after Rachel Zegler for anything, my gosh, she did not drink Sleepy's warm milk. She was given it, and then it's immediately cut to, her having to put it back down because they find out the results of the health of Jonathan.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh, Sleepy worked hard on that warm milk for you, and you just set it down to let it probably grow mold on. She, and she kind of like died soon after, so it's like, it's not like, someone went to go clean that up. I mean, it's probably growing mold on it. He could have had that warm milk and gotten a sound set of sleep right there. Gosh. Why are there no YouTube videos about this? Frustrating. That's my dwarf name.
Frustrating.
Frustrated. I don't know.
I also, again, I don't want to keep shitting on Gal Gadot, but like, she has a song and it just doesn't work. Like, it's just so disappointing because I feel like it could have been cool, and it's like one of those newer songs that you're trying to get for the villain. It just doesn't work.
I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping that, I mean, maybe this was Mark Webb that was kind of, in charge of this, and this is how he wanted to do it, but I would have preferred if Zegler kind of leaned more into for her singing, like lean into that more what she was like with the West Side Story, where it's a little more Julie Andrews-ish, where it's more classic musical rather than, modern. It just felt like I don't know, it could have played better off with a lot of the sequences, and it would have seemed like there was more of a modern telling, but with that same heart, but like showing a stronger sense of that same heart by doing that. And it just felt like it went more of the commercial route that way. And I'm like, it's not bad, but just I would have preferred something a little more majestic.
Honestly, I kind of like that. Julie Andrews, that's actually kind of a good idea. What are they doing next? What Disney princess are they doing next?
Yeah, no, I mean, and like you were saying with Gal Gadot, like we need more of that. Like she occasionally is able to deliver that like firm, evil stance there with her voice and like singing it. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. And then 2 seconds later, it'll have that Kalel no kind of delivery, and I'm like, oh no.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh.
again, it's not to say all her like the whole performance was garbage. It wasn't, but it's just
it's one of her better performances, actually.
It's just it doesn't. There's no balance. That's the thing. It's not consistent. There's no balance. And again, I'll say this till I was gonna say white in the face because Snow White, but like blue in the face. That's the microcosm for the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Annmarie, is there anything else you would like to say about Snow White before we sign off here?
No, it's just disappointing, and I don't want to shit on it too much, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. I will say it's definitely a good movie to take your kids to.
Yeah. Shout out to the parents in front of us who like respectfully shushed their kids and was great parents, by the way.
Yeah, like she was raising her arm, like her little daughter's arms, and like dancing. It was adorable. It was almost like when we saw the Little Mermaid live action, and then there was like a little boy that came up to us afterwards while leaving the theater with their parents, and he's just like, wasn't the movie great? Like, I love it.
I was like, it was, because I'm a Little Mermaid fan.
Yeah. But yeah, I love little wholesome moments like that in the movie theater. It makes it worth it. Reminds us all like why we love the movies sometimes. Yeah, that was wonderful. Oh, I forgot to mention this. At the very end of the movie, Snow White like becomes the queen of her whole town.
Go, girl.
Yeah, it's like, go, awesome, great job. However, did she like kind of make it like a cult or something? Like everyone's wearing white, everything's white all the time, white, 100% white.
Because they're getting married.
The whole town's getting married?
Yes.
You tell me there's a giant orgy in store?
Oh my god.
Like, I mean...
Snow White too.
Snow White too. Your electric boogaloo. But no, like it just felt so weird. Like everyone's wearing white, and especially since they really lean into the idea that a lot of these people are farmers. It's like white is probably not the best choice of clothing when you're digging in the dirt quite a bit, for soil, working with soil and crops. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of new farming technique where wearing white, like all white, is just, the way to go, and it grows crops faster.
Snow White not being fair at all to your farmers.
Yeah.
Maybe she has Tide and she's gonna clean it. This is not sponsored.
Their kids didn't eat the Tide Pods, so they had plenty to use.
There you go.
Yeah. Don't eat Tide Pods. I feel like I need to say that.
Please don't.
There's a callback. But anyway, guys, Snow White, Disney's Snow White, I keep forgetting who owns it, apparently. Disney's Snow White, have you guys seen it? Are you excited that, we got this live action remake? Are you disappointed in it? This whole spoiler talk we just presented with you, what did you think about, everything we said? What did you think about, the dopey talking, significantly amount, like, in narrating the whole thing about Rachel Zegler, Snow White, starting a white cult at the very end, and the weird ending of the whole movie? Like, what do you think of all of it? We want to know your thoughts. Let us know your takes on our tapes in those comments down below. And with that, Annmarie, I think that's about it.
I'm still trying to learn how to whistle.
Well, you can work on it, and while you do, you know what you can do?
Work?
Whistle.
Oh.
While you work.
Okay.
It's like the one rule. No. No, guys, thank you for joining us on this episode of Cassette Take. We hope you haven't ejected thus far into the podcast, but whether you have or haven't, please don't forget to rewind. I've been Ethan.
I've been Annmarie.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, everything. All the above, all the time. Thank you. We love y'all. Goodbye.
Whistle while you work.
Woo!